Have you ever tied up your cabbages? Well, in this video, we're going to talk about why you might want to, and I'm going to do it for the first time. So let's get into it. Hey there, I'm Nicole Burke, the owner and founder of Gardenary Incorporated, Garden plus Ordinary. That's how I came up with the word Gardenary. So my goal with these videos with Gardenary Incorporated is to make gardening an ordinary part of your life. So the way we're going to do that today is we're going to tie up our cabbages. Why in the world am I tying up my cabbages, you might ask? Good question. So as I get to work, I'm going to talk to you about why I'm tying up my cabbages. So cabbages, if you missed our previous video on these Napa cabbages, I talked all about my efforts to get these cutie pies to turn into a full head of cabbage. So in my research and trying to decide what to do, one of the things I saw as a recommendation is to tie up the heads once the first big leaves form. Now this is actually, we're actually you know, a week or two after the first big leaves have formed. But you know, I enjoyed those leaves and honestly ate them. And so now this is the second set of big leaves. So all I'm doing here is I'm kind of using the way these leaves layer with one another and just gently pulling them together in a bunch. And then all I have is some twine, some pre-cut twine. I probably tied it to about, I don't know, a foot long, maybe a foot and a half. And then I'm just going to use this to tie a little bow. I'm not going to tie a knot. I don't want it to be too tight. These leaves are pretty tough. They're definitely tougher than like salad leaves or like lettuce leaves, but I don't want to rip them or anything. So number one reason why I'm doing this is because I want these cabbages to actually form more leaves. So cabbages form their leaves from the center. You see that? So all the new growth comes from the center here. And what we want over the next, say, 20 days is a ton of new leaves. I'm talking a ton right there in the center of the plant. And what can happen is the plant can tend to spread out and put more energy in forming larger leaves rather than forming more internal leaves. So this is kind of just like directing the plant's energy and also protecting the center. So that's the first reason. The first reason is to increase the likelihood of it forming a full head by kind of slowing down and honestly impairing the spread of the large leaves. So that's the first reason why I'm doing this really weird thing. The second reason is because of pests. So brassicas are in, I was about to say brassicas are in the brassica family, but that wouldn't make sense. Cabbages are in the brassica family, and brassicas include things like kale and arugula, broccoli, cauliflower, and these plants are a huge, huge attractor to pests as, especially as the weather warms. So I can't tell you how often I have people write when they see my stuff online on Instagram or whatever, and they DM me and they're like, Nicole, my lettuces are covered with pests. What do I do? And or people will say like, I tried growing those, but they got covered in pests, so I gave up. So one of the things this does is it kind of like, you know, closes off your plant from the pest in some sense. Obviously the pests can still get to the exterior of the leaves, but the likelihood that they're going to be able to reach those interior leaves goes down when you just provide a physical barrier to them. If you haven't seen my previous video I did about my mesh cloth, I'm like covered in the mesh cloth at the beginning of the video if you haven't seen it yet. But in that video, I talk about the fact that physical barriers are really the key to pest protection, that I would prefer physical barrier any day over some kind of chemical barrier or some, you know, cayenne pepper or something lame like that. Like a physical barrier is just so much more simple, and it's kind of the least invasive. I think I'm gonna have to tie this one in a knot. I didn't cut enough string. So I'm kind of doubling these up. The first one I did not double up. and I realized I needed, it didn't hold together. Now with these cabbages, what I'm actually gonna do here is cut the bottom leaves, the ones that I didn't tie up. I'm gonna cut them off, and I'm gonna enjoy these in a little salad for dinner tonight. So any ones that basically were too small to wrap up, I don't want those to be touching the soil, because that makes them basically a bridge, you know, that makes them a bridge to pests. So that is the second reason, is to protect my plants from pests. The third reason is because of the way I like to plant. So if you can't tell from the beginning, or from any of the tours in my garden, I love to do the practice of intensive planting. I talk about this in my book, Kitchen Garden Revival, in chapter 6. Chapter 6, I talk about the idea of how I ignore the plant tag people, the people who tell you how far you need to space your plants apart. So I ignore them, and I just plant plants how tightly I think they should be planted. But one thing that can happen is you end up with some plants preventing the other plants from getting to their fullest, best self, right? And so as you can see, just already, right, with tying these up, what I've done is I've opened up all this soil on the interior so that the other plants I have planted or I want to plant have some sunlight. So it's not that those things didn't have any soil to grow in, they did. Like you can see here, this Swiss chard, it has plenty of soil. And I know because of my raised beds, it has plenty of depth, right? It has plenty of room for its roots. It's just that these leaves were spreading out so much from the Napa cabbage that they were probably shading the Swiss chard too much. So now by tying them up, I still get to break the rules and do my intensive planting method, but everything gets a little bit more sunshine. So this probably opened up, just doing this little section here, this probably opened up a good, I don't know, 6 inches of growing space in between each plant. It also lets me see pests like this little guy. So when I opened this up, a lot of those pests were living under here, right? Because it was shaded and dark. It was like the perfect place for a pest to hide. And so by opening this up, I get to find the people that, or not the people, but the animals that I'm gonna give to my neighbor. Don't worry, she doesn't have a garden over there, it's just grass. All right, so those are the reasons why I'm tying up my cabbages. Now, will this work? Will this make them actually grow into a full head? I don't know, because I've never done this before. So you are just gonna have to stay tuned and see what happens this season. If you missed my first video on my cabbages this season, I talk all about my different methods I'm using to try to get these cabbages to be stunners. So you can check that out here on the channel if you missed it. And I've honestly too been eating from these plants already. So I have, as I've come in and been trying to encourage the inner leaves to form, I've been cutting the outer leaves and making salads. So I've probably had 3 gigantic salads from these leaves already this past week. So nothing wasted, you know what I mean? So even if it doesn't form, I am still gonna get a ton of enjoyment from these cute little plants. So my friend, those are the 3 reasons to tie up your cabbage. First is to encourage them to form a full head, to put the growth focused on the center of the plant. The second reason is to prevent pests from entering the center of your plant. And the third reason is to allow you to break the rules and to intensively plant your plants, and for everybody to get their fair share of growing space in your garden. Even if you did like me and you way overplanted cabbages. I'm pretty sure I have like 30 cabbages between these 2 beds. It's ridiculous. All right, so I'll let you check out the difference between this side and this side that I still haven't tied up, and see what you think. Tell me in the comments if you are gonna try tying up your cabbages the next time you grow them. I would love to hear what you have to say. And if you think, tell me your vote. Do you think this is actually gonna work? Because I'm suspicious, so I'd love to know your thoughts. Thanks so much for watching. I've got tons of resources all about growing cabbages and all the other things on the Gardenary blog. You can learn all about it. And if you're interested in getting help with your own garden design, your kitchen garden design, we have garden consultants all over the country that have been certified through the Gardenary program. And you can find them on the Gardenary site as well at gardenary.com/businesses. They'll help you tie up your cabbages and all the things. All right, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.